Thank you all for joining us. We will get started shortly. We will get started now. Welcome to today's webinar, Federal Hiring for People with Criminal Records. I am Gene Downing, and I work for the Council for Court Excellence, a nonprofit civic organization that convenes the Second Chance Hiring Alliance, or SCHA. Today's program is part of SCHA's event for Second Chance Month, which is federally recognized by President Biden. President Biden's proclamation declared that America was founded on the promise of new beginnings. During Second Chance Month, we recommit to building a criminal justice system that lives up to those ideals so that people returning to their communities from jail or prison have a fair shot at the American dream. We all know that having a good job that allows you to care for yourself and your loved ones is a central part of that ideal. Before we get into the program, I want to quickly give you a brief introduction to the Second Chance Hiring Alliance, or SCHA. The SCHA is a coalition of DC area employers and others working to expand job opportunities for justice-impacted individuals. We are dedicated to increasing second chance hiring in DC, giving returning citizens the opportunity to rebuild their lives through gainful employment. Why do this? We do this by educating employers and the community as a whole about the value of importance of second chance hiring, building and sharing knowledge such as we are doing today, and providing opportunities for dialogue that centers the voices of people with lived experience. If you'd like to learn more about the Second Chance Hiring Alliance, please visit our website. We'll also drop the link in the chat. If you would like to learn more about becoming a member, please email me at this address here. Now, I'd like to turn the program over to today's presenters from the U.S. Department of Labor. We were thrilled to learn that the federal government is seeking to increase its own second chance hiring. And our speakers today will share more about the federal hiring process and how to make yourself competitive when applying for a job with the United States government. At this time, I'm going to turn our presentation over to our presenters, Monique Smith and Karla Alvarado Morales. Ms. Smith is a human resources specialist for the Department of Labor and the Diversity Recruitment and Outreach Branch of the Division of Workforce Development and Inclusion. Ms. Morales is currently interning for the Department of Labor. Thanks to you both.
Thank you, Jean. Hello, my name is Karla Alvarado, and like Jean said, I am an intern currently for the U.S. Department of Labor. For inclusivity purposes, I am a Hispanic woman. Today, I am wearing a floral shirt, and I will pass it over to my colleague Monique Smith for a brief introduction.
Hello, Karla, and thank you very much, Jean, for that warm introduction. As mentioned, my name is Monique Smith, and I am an HR specialist with the department. I've been in the federal sector since October of 2019. And in efforts to be inclusive, I am an African-American woman, and I am wearing a multi-print shirt with colors of blue, green, pink, and orange. And my hair is black, and I'm currently wearing it down. Karla will begin with the first few slides, so I will turn it back over to her, and I will speak to everyone shortly.
Thank you, Monique. Before we get started, here are some of our housekeeping rules. Live caption is available if you need it. Please use the chat for Q&A if you have any questions, and we will do our best to get to those by the end of the presentation. And please ensure that your microphone is muted when you're not speaking. And yeah, thank you. Next slide, please. So here we have a preview on what we will be covering during today's meeting. We'll do an introduction of the U.S. Department of Labor, where to locate federal jobs, the overview of the federal application process, creating USA jobs, a profile, navigating and understanding a job search and job opportunity announcements, federal resume tips, understanding the background process with a record, and resources we have. Next slide, please. So here's an introduction of the U.S. Department of Labor. So we are a department in the executive branch who administers and enforces more than 180 federal laws for about 150 million workers and in approximately 10 million workplaces. It's comprised of over 26 different agencies that collectively support the important work and mission of the department. Our mission is to foster, promote, and develop the welfare of the wage earners, job seekers, and retirees of the United States. We try to improve working conditions to advance opportunities and profitable employment and to assure work-related benefits and rights. Thank you. Next slide. So here we have a chart with some of the different agencies that are part of the Department of Labor. Surprisingly, this is not all of them though. We have about 26 agencies that are under the Department of Labor's umbrella. To name a few, we have the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is responsible for measuring the labor market. We have the Employment and Training Administration, also known as the ETA, whose mission is to provide high quality job training. And one of their tools, which is a helpful resource, has been the Career One Shop, which is a source for exploring career options, providing education and training resources, as well as job assistance. Then we have the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, who are responsible for safe and healthful working conditions by setting and enforcing workplace standards. And there is so many more. If you're interested or want to know more about any of these, feel free to look through the Department of Labor's website. Next slide, please. So next, we will go over, I will turn it over to my colleagues, Monique, who will be going over the application process and how USA Jobs works and the transition to agency. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karla. And before I take a deep dive into the packed agenda that we have, I just want to reiterate the importance that Jean opened up with President Biden's proclamation on Second Chance Month. The federal government is taking an active stand on helping the community and those justice impacted to rebuild a life for themselves. And part of that is expanding opportunities for justice impacted individuals to have a career in the federal government. So with that being said, I want you to keep an open mind and take in all of the great information that we're going to share with you today. So on the slide here, you will see an overview of the federal application process. This is the overview of the 8 steps. You will create your USA Jobs profile starting on USA Jobs. You then have to search for jobs, read through the job announcement. Then you'll prepare your application in USA Jobs, and then you'll submit it to the agency. And once the agency has your application, it will then be reviewed by an HR specialist like myself in the past, and they will determine your eligibility to apply for that announcement as well as the qualifications. And then once that is determined, they will refer the most or best qualified applicants to managers. And the managers from that point will then determine who they would like to interview. And then ultimately, the hiring manager will make the decision if they would like to select a candidate. So let's take a deep dive into each of those steps on the
Monique,
next upcoming
can I
slides.
pause you for 1 second? I'm
Yes,
seeing some
ma'am.
feedback that people are saying they are not seeing the slide, which I'm just wanting to see if there's someone, if that is true for others, could you drop that in the chat or Q&A so that we
Please.
can confirm that and then make sure You also have the ability to control your own view on Zoom. So you may want to, folks, take a look up at the box in the top right corner that says view. So let me see if we're just, I can see the slides I'm seeing. So I think, great, we're hearing some can see now. I apologize, but thank you, pardon me for your flow, interrupting your flow.
No, awesome. I really appreciate that. I don't want individuals to not see the great information. So please interject at any moment if you are seeing any comments about any logistical issues. Moving on, so the next slide here is where you will actually locate your federal jobs. As I previously mentioned, you will start your federal application journey by going to usajobs.gov. And this is the official federal government employment website where you can find and apply for jobs. Most civilian hiring begins on this platform, but the application process is not complete until you finish through the agency system. There are a lot of great resources and information on the website, so make sure you spend some time navigating and exploring through, as you can find many answers to a lot of questions you may have about federal employment. Next slide. Okay, so because we are not conducting any live demonstrations today, we have included some images to assist with visuals of the process. So with that being said, the image on the left-hand side of this slide is the landing page of usajobs.gov, which is essentially the homepage. And there is a bright red rectangle that reads Create Profile. And this is where you will go to start the process. A high-level overview of that process to create your profile is shown on the screen, but don't worry, as you are setting this up for the first time, the system will provide on-screen detailed instructions to assist you. Note though, you will need an active email address, preferably a professional one, and that's required to create your login.gov account. And that is to offer the public secure and private online access to certain government programs. The login system does require at least one authentication method, and this is just to add a layer of protection to verify your identity when you are signing in. It is recommended, though, that you select at least two, either a combination of an email address and a phone number. Just in case you lose access to one, you can still securely sign into your account. Next slide. Okay. So once you have your profile set up from the USA Jobs landing page, you can then begin searching for jobs that meet the criteria that you're looking into, and then begin applying to those positions. So USA Jobs gives you the option to perform a basic job search, and that can be started by entering keywords or a location for the jobs that you would be interested in. And those are in those white fields on the images on the left-hand side of the screen. And the search box that is like a light blue color is where you will select once you have the information or the criteria that you're looking for ready, so you can actually find positions that are relevant to your interests. And then on the bottom image, there is a help center that's circled along at the top. So this is where you can go to look for answers for any questions that you may have regarding the federal application process. It's usually available to be selected on any page that you're on. So if you're reading an announcement and you see something that you're not too sure about, just scroll up to the top and select the Help Center, and you can either select from things that populate on the home page, or you can type into the search bar and get more information there. Next slide. So I wanted to call your or bring your attention to another helpful tool that USA Jobs has for locating positions, and that is the events search option. This was recently refreshed. So they've added a few more tools to help job seekers like yourself be able to locate them more easily. So right at the top on the first image, you'll see there is a hyperlink for events, and that will take you directly to the events page. However, if you're on the landing page and you scroll down to the bottom, the second image on the slide is the preview that you'll see. And this is very helpful because it provides you an opportunity to meet with certain agencies, ask them questions about jobs that you're interested in. You may even find information about federal resume workshops or interviewing workshops. So I highly encourage you to check this out from time to time. It is updated on a regular basis, and you can really find some very helpful tools as you are starting to embark on your federal career journey. Next slide. Okay, so pivoting back to discuss the job search page. When you select the search box, and you are then directed to the list of jobs that fit the description for the criteria you're interested in. On the left-hand side of the right-hand side of the job search page, you will have these filters, and they begin from criteria ranging from remote jobs and ending with your work schedule. You can select one or multiple filter types during your search, which will automatically refresh the page as you make these selections. I won't go into detail on every option. However, I did want to spend a moment and discuss hiring paths, which is the fourth option on the image on the left side. Next slide. Okay, so when you select any of the filter options, it will expand to to a box that has more options for you to really refine your search and create a customized list for you. So the hiring paths essentially explains who can apply to any particular announcement. And that is connected to what HR specialist considers your eligibility. So eligibility is, it just refers to you being part of a particular group of people that an agency wants to hire. It is up to the agency's discretion, and they may post an announcement to maybe one or two of the hiring paths shown on the screen, or you may see an announcement with several. So understanding your eligibility will really help you know what jobs you can apply to, and just save you time so that you're not applying to something that you wouldn't even be considered for, regardless of your qualifications, just because you didn't meet the eligibility requirements. And just looping it all together, there are several different eligibilities in the federal government, and USA Jobs just calls them hiring paths. So to make that connection for you when you are looking at announcements. For the sake of time, I won't go into each one. However, I do want to mention a few. So if you are a U.S. citizen or national, you can apply to jobs that are open to the public. And that is the light blue icon with like three silhouettes in the middle, which is actually the very first one on the image on the left-hand side. So if you do not have any special status, you were never a federal employee or a veteran, you want to select that first option so that you can see jobs that you are eligible to apply for, provided you are a U.S. citizen. However, if you are a veteran who served active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces and were separated under honorable conditions, you may be eligible for veterans preference as well as other veteran specific hiring options. So that one would be under the Armed Forces category with the green icon with the white shield at the very first option. And if you are curious to know if you do meet any of these eligibilities, you can learn more about them in the USA Jobs Help Center that I mentioned before. Just navigate to the Help Center and select the unique hiring paths, and you will be able to find an interactive chart, and you can select each hiring path type, and it will provide information on the eligibility, the documents you may need when applying, and any other relevant information. Next slide. Okay, so after you've modified your search and based on what your personal preference are, your list will result in a list of job opportunity announcements. In the federal government, we call them JOAs, just for short. And the image on this screen will just show you an overview of what that may look like. Once you see a job that catches your eye in the list, you can then select the blue hyperlinked job title to open it up and review the JOA in its entirety. So let's take a deeper dive into what that may look like. Next slide. Okay, so the image on this slide is an example of what you will see after you are redirected to review the full job opportunity announcement. Every job announcement on USA Jobs is formatted the same, regardless of the agency. This just aids with universally understanding and applying to federal jobs. So starting at the top in the dark blue rectangle, you will always find the header, which will include the position title, the department, the agency, and sometimes the office. And then immediately following that information is what I like to call the announcement menu bar. And this includes every section that is in the announcement in that particular order. And that would be the summary, that this job is open to, duties, requirements, how you will be evaluated, required documents, how to apply, the requirements, how you will be evaluated, any required documents, and how to apply. I'm sorry. Couldn't see that part for a second. So while the job announcements can be quite lengthy, they do include valuable information about the job. So it's extremely important for you to thoroughly read through each section before applying. Don't assume that the information in one announcement will apply to another announcement just because it may have the same title or it's within the same agency. So keep that in mind. Next slide. Okay, so listed directly under the job announcement header is the summary section. This will provide an overview of the organizational structure of the position. You may also find some other pertinent information the agency wants to highlight. And then if you click on that Learn More About This Agency button, you will find a point of contact to address any questions you may have or any technical issues you're having with your announcement. And you may also find some other marketing material available. So keep those in mind and utilize those if needed. Next slide. So the next section is the overview. Now this is an anomaly because it is not in the announcement menu bar, the header that's right below the header of the announcement. It's positioned to the right-hand side of every job announcement. And it's true to its name because it is genuinely an overview of what the position is. And you will find a lot of information in this section that's not found in any other area on the announcement, and that can include the announcement number, the promotion potential, the work schedule, if it's remote or not, the pay, the work location, and most importantly, the open and close dates. So you'll find those with in addition to a variety of many other topics. But I do encourage you to review this area really quickly because it can help decide if you want to apply or not, because there are some criterias that just may not be relevant or suitable for your life, and it will save you time. So pay special attention to this area. Next slide. And this is just an image of what that may look like. Every announcement is different, but just to allow you to become familiar with what you may see, we wanted to include those on the slide here. Next slide. Okay, so navigating back to just the normal sections that are included in the menu bar, the next topic we'll talk about is the This Job is Open To section. So this is where you will want to look to confirm the eligibilities or the hiring paths that the announcement is open to. And as a reminder, only the individuals that meet the criteria for these hiring paths will be eligible to formally apply. There is a section called clarification from the agency, which may provide some additional explanations, and I highly encourage you to read that as well, as it can be very helpful. You can also access information from the Help Center directly from the announcement in this section. So if you hover over any of the hiring paths that are listed and you click on it, it will take you to the Help Center section. So USA Jobs is really interactive and built to help applicants at every step in the process. So utilize any links that you see throughout the announcement and just take a moment to read them if needed. Next slide. And this is an example of what that section may look like. So I included two images here because the image on the left-hand side is what you will see typically for status applicants or individuals that hold like special eligibility criteria or meet the regulations for such. And the image on the towards the right-hand side at the bottom is what an announcement will look like for everyone else, everyone that is a US citizen or national. You want to just make sure that you pay attention closely to that section. And if you don't have any of those special eligibilities, just make sure you select the one that's open to the public. Next slide. I wanted to call out really quick a feature that is somewhat new to announcements. There are some agencies that have promotional or marketing videos that are available that can really provide some additional information about either the job you're applying to or the agency itself. So I encourage you to take a moment and review those if they are available, because it can really be helpful to just learn more that you may not have been aware of and could possibly help you prepare when you are getting ready for an interview should you be selected. Next slide. Okay, so the next section I want to cover is the duties. So this is very helpful because it will help you make an educated decision if you want to apply to the position and if it aligns with your career interests and something that you can realistically perform. It's very important to read through this area and make sure that you're covering everything and that things actually make sense to you and it's something you're really interested in, and you're not really assuming what the job is going to be doing because you either held that title before. In the government, it can be very tricky. You can have a same job title and actually performing two completely different functions. So whatever you will be doing in your day-to-day and throughout, any annual performance year will be listed here. So really take a moment and go through this section. And it will just help you to just have a better understanding of the position and help you prepare as you are updating your resume. Next slide. Okay, so the requirements section is really going to help you understand certain conditions that you must agree to for the job. And it will also include some qualifications that's needed, whether it be a combination of experience and or education, and then any additional information. So I want to really highlight the importance of reading through this section, because this is where HR specialists will look to determine if you're qualified for the job. And it may also mention certain conditions that you need, whether it's a drug test or a background check that's required, or any kind of maybe special skills that are needed, like the special language. So really pay attention to this section and make sure that you are able to realistically meet these requirements and that they are documented in your resume. That is very crucial for the qualification part. If you have the experience, you want to make sure it's very clear and thorough in your resume. Otherwise, an HR specialist will not be able to assume that you hold that experience, and they will have to deem you not qualified based on the lack of your ability to demonstrate that in your resume. So I really wanted to call that out to your attention and just make sure that you pay special attention to this section. And then also, if there is an education requirement, that will be listed in there, and any special information to support that will be included as well, such as any accreditations or things like that. Next slide. And this is just an example of what that section looks like. Again, every section will be tailored to that particular job that you're looking at. So pay special attention, but you can see the conditions of employment, the qualifications, any education that may be allowed, and additional information. So pay special attention to that section. Next slide. Okay, so the next topic we'll talk about is the benefits. It's built within your requirement section, but it's kind of hidden. So you have to kind of pay special attention, or you may miss it on accident. But this is just very helpful for anyone that's new to the government. There are links there that you can read and kind of understand what benefits come with federal employment. So I highly encourage you to take a moment and review that section if you are truly interested in the role and want to kind of get a better idea of what to expect. Next slide. Okay, so how you will be evaluated. This section will be tailored again to outline the applicable rules and regulations of federal recruitment and placement procedures for the hiring paths that are included in the This Job is Open To section. Based on whether it's open to the public or status applicants, that this section here will be tailored to exactly what is required when applying. And you want to just pay special attention to this area so that you are not doing yourself a disservice and not including what is required and all of that great information. One other area I want to call out is um, the evaluation factors or the competencies. They are going to be listed in this section as well, which will be helpful when you are preparing your resume to apply for the position also. And the competencies, you may be familiar with them, but they are just the crucial skills, abilities, behaviors, and other characteristics that an individual needs to perform the job successfully. So you want to make sure that you can demonstrate that in your resume as well. But there's also a really cool feature called an occupational questionnaire that you will conduct or complete when you are going through the application process. And this is basically a measurement of the competencies that are listed. And thankfully, in the announcements within this section, you can find a link to preview these questions. So I highly encourage you to review this before you actually go through and apply, because you can also use that to help build your resume and make sure that you have the right information documented that you actually have and experience that you've actually acquired, so that when the HR specialist is going through to review your resume, and then, you know, you are able to make it through to the second phase where the hiring manager is then reviewing your resume. You really can like showcase your skill sets and promote how you will impact the team and just increase your chances at ultimately securing an interview. So I highly encourage you to take a moment and review that information because it's very helpful. And it can also help you decide if this is a job you really want to apply to, because maybe it's asking you about certain skills or competencies and things that you really don't have and you may not be as comfortable applying. I know I've done that personally in my job search process. So take advantage of it and review it when you can. Next slide. Okay, so the next section here is just a picture of what that image may look like. The evaluation details that's hyperlinked with the blue arrow on the left-hand side will really kind of explain more details about the positions or the announcements at the Department of Labor. You can click on that section and it will walk you through almost every area and really provide more detailed information. And that's separate from USA Jobs. That's something that the US Department of Labor has for their announcement. So if you're looking at other non-DOL positions, you may not find this there, but if you're looking at the Department of Labor jobs, you will. And then right below that is where you can find the link to preview that questionnaire that you'll be asked when you are completing your application. So take advantage of both of those. Next slide. Okay, so the required document section is the section that will explain what documents to attach to your resume. It will be very clear and direct. It will also be tailored to the eligibilities, and you will be able to see exactly what is required based on what eligibility you're claiming and or any special requirements that are needed for the job. There are some positions that have a positive education requirement, and that information will be listed in the requirement section, but the required documents will explain what is needed to attach to your application to support those requirements. It is important to know that resumes are always required, regardless which eligibility you're claiming. That is mandatory for HR specialists to determine qualifications. So your resume is essentially your application with the additional technical application that goes through the system. But without your resume, you will not be able to be evaluated. So make sure you attach that and it's updated and it's documented very thoroughly so that you have all the information you need. And then if you are uploading documents to support your application and you have multiple documents of the same type, maybe you went to 2 different colleges and you want to upload your transcripts to maybe justify an education substitution, scan those together as one document so that it doesn't override the first document. Sometimes with the system, it doesn't allow for multiple documents in the same section. So just keep that in mind and try to keep everything consolidated to one document type as much as possible. Next slide. Okay, and this is just an image of what that may look like. As you can see, it's a lot of information, but if you just go through and read this the information that's relevant to the eligibility that that you are claiming, then you can disregard everything else. But make sure you read thoroughly and that you're not missing anything that is required for the application that you are submitting. Next slide. Okay, so the next topic is the next steps, or sorry, how to apply. So this just explains the step-by-step process on how to start your application from start to finish, and it will be very helpful because if you're new to the application process, it will really just kind of walk you through the details. The biggest takeaway for this area that I want you to know, if there is not an application limit, which will be in the overview section in like a yellow box below the open and closing dates. If there is not an application limit, you can edit your application as many times as you want up until 11:59 p.m. Eastern time of the closing date advertised on the announcement. So if you get your application in to be the first day, and then you think about it some more and you want to update your resume or what have you, or attach additional documents, you can do so by going in the system. And this kind of walks you through that process and kind of reminds you. So just make sure that when you are applying that you include all the documents and that you actually go through and resubmit all the way to the end, because that will be crucial to the system counting your application as submitted. So if you go back and make edits, you have to go all the way through the process again. But you do have that option available to you and should be utilized if you need it. Next slide. Okay, so this is the next steps. Towards the bottom of the announcement, this information will be included in every job announcement, and it will really just walk you through an overview of what to expect next. There is generally an expectation of a selection being made within 30 days of a certificate being issued, which means when the applicants are referred to the manager. However, things may be extended due to unforeseen circumstances on the hiring manager's side, or there may be some unforeseen circumstances on the HR side. So be patient in the process. It can take sometimes longer than 30 days, but don't be discouraged by that either, because it's normal. I know some people probably waited maybe close to 40 days, and that's okay. It's not meaning that your application is automatically turned away or that you're no longer being considered. It could be that the hiring manager had some real life work issues or fires, or unforeseen things happen. Maybe someone transitioned from their team unexpectedly and they had to readjust. So just be patient, and you can always reach out to the POC that's listed. If it's been a long time and you really are concerned, just send them an email. Hey, I just wanted to check the status of my application. This is the announcement number, and this is my name, and just wait for a response that way as well. Next slide. So I do want to cover really briefly some resume tips. In the private sector or federal government sector, it's usually one page. But when you're applying to federal jobs, you can have a resume as long as you would like, or as long as you need it to be. My resume is 10 pages, which is very, very lengthy, but it's organized well, and the information that is relevant to the jobs that I'm applying to are highlighted, or sometimes in bold, and it's documented thoroughly so that an HR specialist can determine my skills. So if you hired the required qualifications from maybe 3 to 5 different jobs, list them all. Be very detailed when you're including that information. That drives into the content. You want to make sure that it's an honest representation of your background and that it fully supports the announcement that you're applying to. You want to also make sure that your entry start dates are in like a month and year format, meaning if you started somewhere in January of this year, it shows January 2024 opposed to just 2024. And that's required because HR specialists need to calculate the time that you've spent in that job to properly credit you the experience for the qualifications that you have. You also want to make sure that it's free from any grammatical, spelling, or typographical errors. And that can be like the spacing is inconsistent or you use multiple different fonts. Just something that distracts the reader because it's inconsistent and it doesn't flow properly. You also want to make sure that it's clear and concise with plain language. Plain language meaning it's easy to be understood by a third party that's outside of your area of expertise. You want to make sure that you spell out your acronyms. When you are introducing a very long word for the first time, you want to spell out that entire word and then put in parentheses your acronyms immediately following that. And any subsequent mentions in the announcement can then be used with that acronym. And then you also want to just make sure it's consistent with verb tenses and that you have well organized section headers. Next slide. So to cover some things that you should not include in your federal resume, I wanted to start with any non-merit-based factor surrounding your background. So in the federal government, all selections must be based on merit, meaning what qualifications this person possessed to complete the job. So you don't want to voluntarily put information about anything that you've done with any correctional facilities as far as serving time, unless you are trying to demonstrate the work that you've acquired there and you're highlighting your experience that way. But don't have a section for your criminal history, like don't highlight any of that. It's not relevant to the position. Managers do not need to know that, and we'll cover some more about that in the upcoming slides, but do not include any non-merit factors. And then next, you want to not include your social. It's a day and age where, privacy is very important. It's always been important, but in the virtual age where a lot of systems are being hacked, you want to minimize the potential for risk as much as possible. So don't include it. It's not required if you're selected for a job. There are secure systems where your social security number will be entered and used for the documents needed, but it's not required in your resume. You also want to not include pictures of yourself, any personal information such as your age, gender, any religious beliefs you hold, any special affiliations. You can keep those off your resume. It's not required unless you're speaking to like a group that you're a part, a professional group that you're a part of, where you hold a special title and you're doing special activities to support the mission of the group. That's different. But any private social groups, you can leave those off if it's not relevant to the qualifications. And then also any encrypted or digitally signed documents, as well as any classified or government sensitive information, if you've ever had the opportunity to be around that. Next slide. Okay, so we will spend the next 5 slides talking about the background process. And I do want to start off by kind of debunking a myth that many people may already have, and that is that the federal government hiring policies prohibit employment of people with criminal records. But the fact is that the people with criminal records are eligible to compete for the vast majority of federal jobs. And this fact is supported by the merit system principles, which requires agencies to make selections or tentative selections rather amongst the highest rated candidates who comply with the requirements of the position. And those candidates can include people with criminal records. Next slide. So I do want to take a moment to take a deeper dive into the merit system principles, just so you have some general understanding of it. The merit system principles, or we call them MSP for short, they are 9 basic standards that govern the management of the executive branch workforce. The Department of Labor is within the executive branch, as Karla mentioned. So we are required to adhere to these standards, as well as many other federal departments and agencies. And these were just created to protect the integrity of the civil service process and all Americans included in that process. And that includes you. You are an applicant. You are considered as part of that process, regardless what your background is. So I wanted to just bring your attention to the first 2 principles. And the first one just states that recruitment should be from qualified individuals, from appropriate sources, in an endeavor to achieve a workforce from all segments of society. And selection and advancement should be solely determined on the basis of relative ability, knowledge, and skills after fair and open competition, which assures that all receive equal opportunity. And the next one speaks to the equity in the process. And that says all employees and applicants for employment should receive fair and equitable treatment in all aspects of personnel management without regard to your political affiliation, your race, color, religion, national origin, your sex, your marital status, age, or handicapping condition, and with proper regard for their privacy and constitutional rights. So I really wanted to just bring that in the conversation because it is illegal for any person in the federal government to not adhere to these standards, these merit system principles that govern the executive branch workforce. And so if you are an applicant in the process and you feel that, you were discriminated against, you have a voice. So regardless if you have a background, you should also be have the opportunity to have your proper regard for your privacy and your constitutional rights. And so moving on to the next slide, I just want to also bring awareness that there are a few positions that, based on your background, you may not be eligible for. The federal government employs people, including people who may have criminal records, as mentioned. And you have to just demonstrate that you possess the knowledge, skills, and ability for that. However, there are certain laws that surround or protect certain positions in the government. So I do want to take a moment and speak on those because it can help you when you are deciding when to apply to a position. So for certain laws, like those prohibiting treason, they carry a lifelong ban on federal employment. And just for my awareness, I included the definition because I hear treason, but I'm like, what does that really mean? And so treason is the crime of betraying one's country, especially by attempting to kill the sovereign or overthrow the government. So if you've done something along those lines, it's very likely that you will have a lifelong ban um, um, on federal employment, but the final determination will rest with the security specialist. Um, and then there are other laws that prohibit federal employment for a certain number of years. And then lastly, the bond amendment imposes restriction related to national security positions. So there are certain jobs that you do need to be careful of, or that you may want to reconsider applying, and wanted to leave that information for you. And we are approaching right at 1:30 in less than a few moments. So I will move on. I think there's just two more
Ms.
slides.
Smith, if you feel good, I just put in the chat, but I'll pop in to say, please go ahead and finish. You're giving such great detailed info. If you're willing, the DOL reps, to stay an extra 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
audience members can stay, we'll add that 10-minute time for Q&A. And if you can't stay, because we recognize everyone's time is precious, you'll make sure to have the recording available to you so you can see those soon thereafter.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I will be brief because we are at time, but I do want to also just leave you with, for most federal jobs, questions regarding the criminal history of an applicant does not appear on the initial application process. So recapping the federal application process, you apply for a job, you're referred to the manager then selects an applicant for an interview, the manager selects them for the position, and then HR contacts the applicant to extend a verbal and a written tentative or conditional job offer of employment. So I want to make sure that you know at no point in any of those steps that I just mentioned should any questions related to your background be raised by anyone at the agency or involved in the application process, especially in your interview. And so you will not be asked any personal questions about your background until after your tentative offer is given to you, and then you are asked to complete the onboarding tasks that are required for every applicant. It's not just for any one person or one type of job. Every person that is seeking employment for a federal position goes through this process. And part of it is the background process to determine suitability for employment. And so in that process, there is a task that you'll be asked to complete, which is to fill out your declaration for federal employment, which is an OF 306. And this is used for two different reasons. One is to document the process for your appointing your appointment into that role, as well as information for security that a security specialist will use to initiate your background investigation. It's important to be very honest when you're doing this process. It will ask questions very specific to your background, and there is a box in that form for you to explain anything that you have provided a positive answer to. Just be honest. It is okay. The biggest issue is because you're going through the background process and they're pulling reports and you have to get fingerprinted, and different rap sheets may come up from the county or state or federal level. It's going to be discovered during the discovery process. So it's no point in trying to hide it or being very private about it, because the act of being dishonest will harm you probably far greater than the act of what incident or occurrence that you've conducted, because that will speak to your character very deeply. So I really want to make sure that you should be honest honest, especially in this process, because it will hurt you far more than help you. And then each background investigation or suitability evaluation is on a case-by-case basis. And the security specialist that's going through your background will work directly with you. The manager that you're working with, they are not involved in this process. It is a very private, confidential process between HR, the security specialist, and then the applicant. So um, rest assured that it's not being disclosed to the manager, and they are privy to that information, because they are not. It is actually illegal, and agencies can get fined if they handle the OF 306. So at least have some peace in knowing that. Next slide. And then the last slide we'll cover for the background process are just some principal considerations that agency use when hiring people with criminal records that can help make the determination for suitability. And that includes an individual's character, traits, and their conduct, any potential conflicts between the criminal conduct and the core duties of the job, any potential conflicts between employment of the individual and interests of national security. Then we also look at the nature of the crime, the seriousness, the recency, and the circumstance in the individual's criminal activity. And then lastly, the potential for rehabilitation or efforts towards rehabilitation. So if you do have any unfavorable or derogatory information in your background, sometimes they may ask you to write a letter, and that will explain what the incident was, what steps you've taken to correct that or prevent said incident from occurring again. And this is where you can really speak to your character and how you've changed and improved, and you rehabilitated, and you've, committed to being a great upstanding citizen from that point forward. That really connects to the president's proclamation on second chance, believing that everyone deserves a second chance. Some people really make mistakes, and it's like, oh my gosh, like they've really learned. And so when you can demonstrate that in the steps that you've taken in your private life, in addition to documented and being honest throughout the process, that can really help you as you are navigating through the process of applying for a federal job. Next slide. And these are the resources that I believe have been dropped in the chat throughout the presentation. So I want to move to the next slide and close out on my end and open the Q&A section for Jean, maybe to assist with navigating. But before he joins, I just want to thank you very much for joining, and thanking you for staying with us 7 minutes over. We had a lot of information, but it was very, very important. We really hope that you've learned at least one thing, and that you feel a little bit more empowered and confident and excited about even the potential for applying to a federal job. There are many opportunities for you, even if it's not in one position. The government has many, many jobs. We are the nation's largest employer. So there is potentially a job for you, and we hope that you consider applying.
Thank you so much, Smith, the DOL team. Jean, this voice you're hearing is Misty. I'm a team member at CCE, but just for the sake of facilitation, I think in looking at the Q&A written questions, they are largely going to be for the DOL team. So I'll let you, Monique, just go ahead and pick out ones that you feel equipped to answer. Folks in the audience, for your time and just for she may not have answers to all of your questions. We'll keep them in mind, though, and to the extent that Second Chance Hiring Alliance can get you good answers, we will do so after the fact, but we'll give about 10 minutes now to you to answer what you can of these. I'm not sure that we'll be able to take live questions in light of time. So if those of you who have your hand raised can try your best to drop a few things in the written chat, that'll help us to go through.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I do see there was a question that states, what path would you use if you were a former federal employee? So if you have status as a former federal employee, meaning you competed for a job, you held it on a permanent basis, and you've held that job for at least 3 years, you have what they consider tenure, and you can come back to apply non-competitively at any point. And you can use the job that is open. I believe it states competitive employees or current and or federal employees. But there is a hiring path that states that, and you would be considered part of that, even if you are no longer currently a federal employee because you hold tenure. But if you held a job that's not on a permanent basis, or it was less than 3 years and it's been more than 1 year since you separated, meaning you no longer are eligible for reinstatement, you would more likely apply to a job that's just open to the public, meaning you're competing with everyone, including veterans, again, unfortunately. And then the next question I see states, what particular JOAs can people apply that give them the second chance? What are the title of the jobs? So that's a good question, but it is very vague because it's going to determine on each individual skill set. There are individuals, and I always get this confused, but I think it's called white collar crimes when it's like Wall Street related or some technical like word. But there are some people who have committed crimes who've held professional careers in their past. And so if that happens to be your case, you would then be able to apply to a job in the government that is related to the background that you already hold. Now, if you don't have that much professional experience, you may want to consider jobs that are open to wage grades, which are more manual labor jobs. You're paid on an hourly basis, but it gives you that foot in the door. It gives you that stability, that chance to build your economic independence. And those are posted on USA Jobs fairly. At the Department of Labor, we don't have wage grade positions. They are more on the professional or the assistant clerical type of, just based on the type of work that we do. We aren't really hands-on per se with manual labor, but there are many other federal departments that do offer wage grade positions and are great opportunities for anyone that's looking for a job, not just someone that has a background, they're looking to have a second chance and rebuild themselves. It's a great job for everyone. So don't feel like because it's manual labor, it's any less than. All of the jobs are important. They all serve a very great mission. You're helping.
Thank you all for coming and attending our third Second Chance Hiring Alliance webinar. I hope you all found this information helpful. I hope you found this information very useful, and please, by all means, reach out to myself. And if you have any interest in learning more about the Second Chance Hiring Alliance, reach out to myself. If you have any interest in joining the Second Chance Hiring Alliance, also reach out to myself. My email and information is put in the chat. Also, thank you to the Department of Labor. Monique, Karla, you did such a wonderful job. We definitely have to have you back on and do this again. This was a great turnout, and I hope to see you guys again. Thank you for coming. Thank you, thank you, thank